Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's Just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
Namaste, mofos.
If you got a tip for Melissa, the bus bench under which a note might be found, a string of mysterious robberies, who to bribe in order to actually beat Bobby Flay, anything, tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837, or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. We just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host, reminding you that you will watch every Dollar Tree video by Do It on a Dime, and you will like it, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. Have I ever forced you to watch a Dollar Tree haul video on YouTube?
No, you have
Okay,
never.
good.
You've
All
never like, threatened me or forced me. But I do fall asleep to them quite often.
Yeah. It's either that or I try not to use the makeup ones because I have to watch those intently, and you don't need to know how to put a cut crease for someone with a hooded eyelid. That's probably not something you would want to know about.
No.
Right.
There and it's the little teeny boppers that are doing it. It's just that are like,
no.
Oh guys, isn't this exciting?
No.
Yes.
Wrong.
Yeah.
I listen to mature women because I'm an old lady. There's
All
a
right.
few youngsters.
Yeah.
One, oh man, what is her name? She's so cute. She lives in Michigan. I'll have to get her name.
Maybe it's the cuteness that bothers me.
She has a high-pitched squealy voice, but I believe
Yeah.
she's closing in on 30. She's not a teenager, but here's what
30 to me is a
I know she's a youngster. She's a
bopper.
youngster, but you have to listen to me for a second.
Yeah.
She might be one of the most informed YouTubers I've ever seen. I mean, I don't know how to even explain it. She does deep dives into, I don't mean like, here's how you do makeup. She does deep dives into the companies that own makeup, the brands that own makeup, the companies that buy smaller brands and put them all under their one umbrella and charge, $5 for one eyeshadow and $40 for another eyeshadow under a different name, and it's the same formula. I mean, I really love her. She's she's a makeup detective.
Yeah, that's a good. That's good information. There's no question.
I love her. I love her.
Okay.
And I feel terrible. I can't remember her name.
Well,
pretty little girl.
Anyway.
Anyway.
If they're old enough, if they're young enough to be my daughter or granddaughter, they're kids. I'm sorry.
Okay, Grampy.
All right.
Most of the people I watch are definitely in their 30s, 40s, and most of the time you don't see a lot of YouTubers in their 50s because they typically don't hold up well. But I'm not trying to be. I'm in that category.
You hold up beautifully.
Oh yeah, You're
you
just
do.
saying that because
you do, and you don't even
sleep with
need
me.
you don't even need makeup. So, see, typical woman here. Oh, I gotta have makeup to look beautiful.
Have you seen my vanity, sir?
I haven't.
Yeah, you pay for it, so
I know.
I do need makeup.
And I'm telling you,
I need
you
a
don't
shitload.
I see you without makeup, and you're just as beautiful.
All right, look, I'm just going to say this, and I
Yes.
hope I don't sound conceited. I am real happy with everything above the neck. I am deliriously happy to be at my advanced age, and I can only thank my mother, my grandmother. I sound like I'm accepting an Academy Award.
Right.
Who's
your agent?
It's all to Jesus. I want to thank Jesus for my good skin. I don't have an agent or a manager. I have an esthetician. Her name is Michelle. Okay. So, yeah, I would like to thank Michelle, my esthetician, for scraping my face off and doing what she does.
You do have a beautiful face.
Well, bless you, sweetheart.
You're beautiful everywhere.
Yeah,
but
it's not.
You are.
Look, it's not important. What's important is that I have a beautiful soul.
Well, that's true, too.
Black and crusty and shriveled, but it's beautiful nonetheless.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, speaking of that, I would love to thank our beautiful black and crusty shriveled tipsters. I'm just kidding. They're beautiful and fresh and red and plump and filled with oxygen. And we got a lovely review from, and I don't know that I could love the Apple username anymore, by BYE 122334455666778. I think she or he probably went on.
Yeah.
Don't think it escaped me by that you put 3 6s, and that is one reason I love you, you little devil-possessed
and the
reviewer.
the first digit only 1, the last digit only 1, and then in the middle the 6 has 3.
Yeah.
See, I noticed that too.
Okay. So, By, he or she, don't know the gender, entitled the review, "I've Missed You." And I thought, oh no, what happened? Did By not have access to the internet? But no, what By said was, "I binged you for the first few months, and now I hate having to wait for new releases. I feel like you and producer Mark became my friends who were hanging out with me every day. Love what you do and how much heart you put into it." So thank you, By. And
see, our past episodes are like, what the pusher uses to get the
yes, to get you to come back
get you
to
hooked,
the current ones,
to get you hooked.
God damn, the pusher man.
Yes.
Steppenwolf. I bet you John Kay and Steppenwolf had no idea they would be influencing people who make podcasts back in the 60s or 70s. Well, since
podcasts didn't exist, and the entire idea of the internet would probably have freaked them out. Yeah, you're probably right.
But yeah, their use of the "Goddamn the Pusher Man" song, yeah, that's good. I think it was it Steppenwolf? Did I make that up?
I believe it was.
Okay.
Yes.
It's way before my time, but I had older friends and coworkers that mentioned the song, and I was like, there was a song that said "Goddamn the Pusher Man"? But yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was alive when the movie came out.
What movie?
Easy Rider. That's what it's from.
Oh, okay.
And I thought you knew that. Sorry.
I did not.
But I was in like junior high or something when it came out. And, it was like, oh my God, there's a song called "God Damn the Pusher Man." We used
That's
to
hilarious.
Okay.
I even feel younger now, Grandpa, but thank you for the movie review, the album review. So thank you, By, for your lovely review. And if you yourself, if you are listening to this podcast and you would like to email us, call us, rate or review the podcast, we'd be deliriously happy. Please feel free to do so. I should have mentioned that By gave us a 5-star review, so that's very nice. I'm not asking for 5-star reviews, sort of, but not really. So I feel like you should give us a review.
I'm asking for a 5-star review.
Or a rating that you feel is fair. That's all I'm saying. So if you think it's like a 1-star, then you know what? Find another podcast. That's okay. You'll find something you like. Just there's no reason to shit on our, birthday cake. So
I love that.
Yeah, thank you. So please feel free to rate, review, subscribe to this podcast. We would be very grateful. It's a gift to us. You can email us at any time, any case suggestions you have, or even information if you just want to say hi. We love to hear from you at jttipsters@gmail.com. And we have the Tipster hotline. If you are maybe not a emailing kind of person, you can call us any time of the day or night at 832-847-7837. That's 832-TIPSTER. And we are grateful for any way that you reach out to us. Really, really grateful. And by the time this episode comes up, I should be back from Kentucky, barring any weird strange things.
Yes, you're not gonna be. She's back, folks, when you're listening to this, but you're gonna have to wait to find out.
Guess who's back?
Yeah, you're
back
gonna have
again.
You're gonna have to wait to find out all the fun stuff next week. Next week.
Yeah, let's hope it's fun. I hope it's fun stuff. By the time you hear this, hopefully, I will have been on Good Morning Cincinnati with the incredibly beautiful Sheila Gray. I was honored, blown away, gobsmacked when she sent an email with the producer Tanner and said, "We'd love to have you in studio to talk about the podcast when you're in town." And I was like, what? Me? So I've never been in studio. I've done 3 or 4 Zoom interviews during this wonderful lockdown with the Good Morning Cincinnati crew at WKRC. And I, am a little afraid, but I'm good.
You're going to do great. You're going to do great.
I know. Hopefully I'll be in good hands because...
I should say you've done great. You did great.
I did great in the past, even though we're not there yet and it's a future. But so this is a really interesting case, and I have known about it for a while and wasn't sure I could cover it, but I was asked by a Long Beach police detective, a retired Long Beach police detective, and I dug into it and I thought, you know what? There's too much interesting information here for me to not cover this case. The case is considered closed by the Long Beach Police Department. I think after you hear some of the details, you can make up your own mind. and maybe you'll agree with me, and I'm going to give you some information of a place to go where you might register your consternation with this case. The detective said, hey, the detective is a yoga practitioner also. And when he found out I have practiced yoga for 22 years and taught yoga for 16 years, he said, hey, have you ever heard of blunt force yoga? And I laughed really hard and thought, that's hilarious. Is this something you're trying to start? And he said, no, it's a book. And it's a true crime memoir by a woman named Lisa Jones. And I have had a very rocky relationship with family members of victims who have written books themselves. If they have a good editor or even a ghostwriter, it's helpful.
It's one of those don't try this at home things,
You're right. You're right, Producer Mark. I think everyone thinks they can write, and hopefully if you've gotten through the public school system, you can write or type, but not everyone should write a book, because even if you think you have a book in you, and I imagine every human being's journey, we all have a book in us, you probably need help. That's why writing is a profession. It isn't just, hey, you know what, I am smart and literate and I have a good story to tell. There's an undefinable thing when, and really, as much as I love books, the ones I'm just going to speak about right now involve true crime or unsolved cases or solved cases. And there's a thing that you can't, how they say people that are in the entertainment industry, there's a star quality that you can't pin down. There's just a something about them. There's a thing about a writer. And there's so many different types of writers, right? Technical writers, fiction writers, poetry. There's all different types of writing. But most of the books I've read, written by family members, and they have the best of intentions, are not great. This book is not terrible, but it's very technical and written from the perspective of a sister who is brokenhearted and suspicious and has theories, and at some points even a little bit of a conspiracy theory that I'm not quite sure I buy into. But there are definitely questions, concerns that Lisa Jones raises about her sister Dana Kathleen Jones passing that need to be looked at. And I really believe this case should be reopened for a lot of reasons, which I'm going to give you some right now. But honestly, I encourage you to do your own research. Blunt Force Yoga is available, I think on Amazon is where I bought it. Again, it's been a few months. I've read it through twice. It's not a long book. It's not a difficult read, but it is heavy with details and information that Lisa wants you to know, mostly inspired, I think, by her anger at her brother-in-law, who she feels took the life of her sister.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because if you're not a good writer, you put everything in and you don't leave. The trick of good writing is leaving only what needs to be said to get, and editing. It's all about editing.
Editing.
But it sounds okay. I can't wait to hear this case now.
Well, it's a fascinating one, and it meant more to me because of who it came to me from, someone in law enforcement, and because it involves yoga. Sort of on the periphery, it involves yoga because it was used as the excuse for Dana's death. And I will be honest, I don't know of anyone who practices yoga who died during yoga, unless I can tell you I know of someone who passed away in Shavasana in a classroom, and she was older and she was ill. And the yoga, it was one of the teachers that I took teacher training from, a very respected teacher in the Northern California, Judith Lassiter. And she taught, for the most part, a slower type of yoga, restorative yoga. And she had a yogi in her class who they got into Shavasana, which if you practice yoga, it's the last 5 to 10 minutes, depending on who you are, who's teaching, where you lie down quietly. It's called, let's be honest, Shavasana is the Sanskrit word for corpse. It's corpse pose. So you're lying flat on your back for the most part. You might have a bolster under your knees or a blanket under your head, however you can lie comfortably on your body, your joints, your bones, your muscles. And this is where your body integrates all the poses you've put it in the last hour or hour and a half. It's the most important pose in yoga. If you speak to anyone who teaches yoga, who practices yoga, you can't skip it. You might want to because you're some sort of kick-ass power yogi. Well, fuck off. Do that and then lay down. Let your body accept what you've done and figure out, oh, this is what is happening and this is why my body feels this way and my muscles, etc. So this woman had passed away in corpse pose. I just can't imagine anything more beautiful other than going to, dying in your sleep. So
that is beautiful.
It's a beautiful story.
I'm almost crying.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. I know a few people who have gotten injuries from yoga. For the most part, it's not the yoga pose. It's the person practicing yoga who might push themselves too far. Our friend Al, who is a very accomplished yogi, tore his meniscus in crow pose. Easy to do. You're balancing your knees on your forearms. I know it sounds, you're like, what? But he said everyone in the room heard it pop and he had surgery and it's fine. People hurt their neck quite often and I'm going to call it user error. I will tell you, I had a crappy experience with a very, not mindful teacher in a headstand. And this is going to be an entree into this case. I was in a headstand, probably different than Dana Jones was, according to her husband, is what killed her. I had a blanket under my shoulder, and a lot of people do to protect your neck, right? And the teacher, who was an Iyengar teacher, and I don't want to get too inside baseball here, but they like things to be lined up real perfectly, came by and yanked the blanket because it wasn't lined up with the floorboards.
You got to be kidding.
No.
Oh, for God's sake.
This was at Yoga in Newhall. I'm just going to call it out. And she twisted my neck. And it could have been really bad, and it wasn't. I spent about 5 days.
Oh, I remember this
You
now.
remember?
I
had to turn my entire body to look over my shoulder when I drove because I could not move my head to turn and look. It was dangerous in that I had to manipulate my body to drive correctly.
You should have gotten her fired. No, that's terrible.
Well, that's probably a case for another conversation. But I feel like I learned from her to never. I would never have done that anyway at teaching, but I learned a lot. I learned what not to do. And I have to take the gift from her and find the grace in that it only lasted about 5 days where my neck was sore and I, iced it and I was able to move my head again. It could have been much, much worse, but it wasn't. So let's start with this case. And it is, I hate to call it a case because the Long Beach Police Department has considered it closed, consider it an accident, and I just don't know how. And you'll hear from experts who say this case needs to be reopened. Now, here's something else I'm going to tell you. If you go looking for information on this case, you are not going to find a lot on the internet. What you're going to find if you type in Dana Kathleen Jones is pretty much everything from her sister. Her sister has compiled all of the information she can. And honestly, I don't know how she got some of this because she has a website, yogadeath.com. Sounds gruesome, I know. And, blunt force yoga, title of the book. Attention getter, for sure. And I believe she thinks, I know she thinks that her sister died of blunt force trauma to the head, not involving a yoga pose. One of the things you're going to find is from a local Long Beach publication called the Beachcomber. And honestly, that was 4 years after Dana's death. And I think it came down to one of the people who writes for the Beachcomber is a retired homicide detective. And I believe that Dana's sister, Lisa, bombarded everyone with an open door trying to get justice for her sister. And they eventually decided to let Stephen Downing, this retired homicide detective and chief of police of an agency, honestly, write Dana's story from Lisa's perspective. So it was a 2-part article expose in the Beachcomber magazine from April of 2018. But pretty much everything else you're going to find online about Dana's case is going to be because of her sister Lisa, and because journalists don't cover cases that they think it's an accident. It was never classified homicide or undetermined. It was classified accident and yet blunt force trauma. So, I don't know how much I want to argue with the coroner's report. I definitely want to argue that the way this case was handled was terrible. There are some points in Lisa's book that I would argue with also, because I think she goes a little too deep into some conspiracies. I don't know that it was ever anything that malicious, but you could call it inadvertently malicious because of the way it was handled, the way it was swept under a rug, and the way the original officers who handled it were treated. And I can tell you that the law enforcement officer, retired, who told me about this case is a former partner of this detective, Todd Johnson, who just really couldn't be more of a fuck up. And having the protection of the thin blue line, and I hate saying that because it feels like I've been coming down pretty hard on law enforcement lately. And I don't want to do that because I have the greatest respect for those in law enforcement. I don't care who you are. I've had people that I love and adore email me, tell me they're not going to listen to the podcast anymore because I'm a cop-loving bootlicker. I'm not. I'm a good person lover. And if you're a good person, I don't give a crap what you do for a living. But if you're a good person and a cop, I'm grateful for you. If you're a shitty person and a cop, go fuck yourself and get the hell off the force. Get a different job, you fucker. We put our souls in your hands. It has to be a remarkably difficult and rewarding career. And if you're not ready to do it, if you're not able to do it, don't hang around for your pension. You can find another gig with a pension. But we entrust our lives to you. And a lot of times your lives don't make it out. I saw a photograph today that almost stopped my heart. Sheriff Michael Helmig of the Boone County Police Department posted a release of a deputy who had gotten a report of a drug incident in a parking lot in Walton, Kentucky at 4:14 a.m. And the picture with the faces blotted out, both the suspect and the sheriff, is frightening. Don't know how, unless it was someone else's body cam, how they got these pictures. But they asked, there was a male and a female in a car. They asked the male to exit the car. When he did, he pulled a gun and put it in the face of the sheriff. And the sheriff, the picture is in movement. The sheriff knocked the gun out of his hand. And they both fell to the ground. And the suspect ran away, but was captured on foot.
Oh, my God.
It's the most heart-stopping thing I've ever seen. So I don't care who you are. If you hate the police, that's up to you. You hate them all you want. I'm not going to hate them. I'm going to be hopefully fair and balanced, that most of them are incredible human beings. And I'm blessed to have friends, not just people I know and interview and talk to, these are friends in my heart who do this job. People who are civil servants who stop serial killers. People who are civil servants who get guns pulled in their face on the daily. I don't understand this lumping everyone together that all cops are bad. All cops are not bad. All cops are also not good, as we're going to see here. And this officer, Todd Johnson, is apparently still on the force. I don't know if he is as of 2021, but I know he was no longer a detective. And it is very clear that he has or had a drinking problem. He showed up to crime scenes inebriated, and he was, playing fast and loose with investigations and calling this one an accident. And, I'm quite sure Detective Johnson's not a yoga practitioner, but like I said, and this was his partner, it was not his partner at the time of this case, but was like, wow, this is coming down pretty hard. He had been a previous partner of Detective Johnson, and he's like, who dies from a headstand? And honestly, if there is any pose that might, cause you some sort of injury, it would be a headstand. But for the most part, you're not going to die. It might be a terrible injury, but it would be user error. It wouldn't be that yoga killed you. It would be, you fell out of the pose, you injured yourself, whatever. I'm not blaming the victim. I'm just saying you're not going to die of a 4.5-inch laceration to the back of your head because you fell out of a headstand onto the floor in your yoga room.
4.5 inch?
4.5-inch laceration pressed in her skull caused her brain to swell immediately.
From a headstand?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, an upside down L-shaped laceration.
I do not perform yoga, but I'm already suspicious.
Yes, thank you. If you fell out of a headstand and you landed on a hammer, maybe. Most people who have a yoga room in their home, myself included, I don't keep hammers there.
If you landed on the claw of the hammer, maybe.
Yeah, and moved around so that it connected to 4.5 inches. I mean, yeah, I don't understand. So let's start with on March 10th of 2014, the Long Beach PD received a 911 call. Dana Jones was a successful kitchen designer. She had a company called The Kitchen Consultant, and her designs were not just like, oh, here's somebody who can help you tell you where to put a cabinet or an island. Her designs were featured in This Old House and in popular design magazines. I mean, she had a business, and quite frankly, it sounds like she needed to because her husband didn't do much. He was a contractor, sort of, a handyman, sort of. I think he enjoyed living the life they lived when they bought this house in Long Beach that Dana fixed up and made to their liking, and it was lovely. I don't think he did a whole lot. So her husband, known affectionately by friends and family as Huck,
oh, boy.
I don't even know how to start with his names. So I believe his birth name is something different, but at some point he was known as Carl Lynn Jenkins when they got married. Now, he changed his name to Jones because her name was Dana Jones. So he was Cain Finn Jones at that point.
So he was happy to hitch his wagon to her success.
Yes,
clearly.
Yes. And I don't know what the deal is with the names. He seems like, look, you're maybe not a big ambitious worker. You got fucked up tattoos all over your body. You're kind of a charmer. Does it make you a murderer? No. Does it make you suspicious? Yes. Do you have a bunch of shit names for no reason? That sounds weird. Uh-huh. So Carl Lynn Jenkins, Cain Finn Jones, spelled C-A-I-N, Cain spelled K-A-N-E, Cain Finn Kealoha, a made-up last name like he loves Hawaii.
Oh, God.
Cain Finn Hucky Kealoha.
He's used these names.
Yeah, he's now known as Cain Kealoha, both with a K. And I think he changed his name so that people who thought that he had killed his wife couldn't find him. And, they're like, there's one or two people, old neighbors who were defending him, were like, if you had family members of someone who died coming after you, you would change your name too. No, I wouldn't. Not if I were innocent.
I'd stand tall.
Yeah, I would still be Melissa Morgan. I would not be, Melissa Kealoha.
Come on, I want to lay ya.
And that, sir, comes into play later.
I had a feeling it might.
He joins a widowers group.
Yeah, I sort of sensed that coming. I just kind of feel it, you know?
Apparently he was a little bit of a rounder. And Dana was this, very classically beautiful, intelligent, tall, thin, yoga practitioner who, for some reason, I'm just going to say this, and I don't give a shit if her sister Lisa gets pissed. Her picker was broken. There's a lot of us, mostly women, but I'm sure some men, who think of ourselves as, savers. My love will save them. So they're rough around the edges. They need some help. My love will save them. I'll love them enough that they will become who they're meant to be, which is the wonderful person I see inside. Yeah, that means your picker's broken. You don't pick someone who's a project. If you want a project, remodel your garage. Don't
go volunteer at the animal shelter.
Yeah, that's a good project. Dana and Huck, I'm just going to call him Huck for simplicity, live in this lovely home in Long Beach that Dana has remodeled and made beautiful. And Huck is, as producer Mark said, kind of along for the ride. Another reason that's difficult to read this book is that I don't know that Lisa can be objective. They tolerated Huck for Dana's sake because they loved her and they wanted to stay in contact with her. I don't think it was ever acrimonious. I think they probably subconsciously all knew what they were doing, which is trying to stay in touch with their family member. They never thought he was really supportive of her. He just kind of went along to get along, and that's how they felt, and they thought she deserved much more. And they're right, she did. She was this accomplished, beautiful, intelligent, wonderful designer. She did not deserve to die in her home at the age of 50 and then be blamed for her death saying she fell out of a yoga pose. That's just my opinion here. That is not, that's just me saying my opinion. So I will tell you, I reached out to Lisa and said, I read your book. I've read the interviews in the Beachcomber. Your way of collecting this evidence is amazing. And it is, because she got, her website has crime scene photos of Lisa's injuries and pictures of Huck with his shirt off being photographed to see if he had any injuries on him, which you'll see why he probably wouldn't, because it looks like she was attacked from behind. She didn't have a chance. She didn't know what was happening. And she did not answer me. And it was months ago. And so one thing I don't understand is that when someone is screaming loudly, please someone help me. Please someone give me information. Please someone. And a podcast or a journalist contacts you and says, hi, I'm here. If you don't want to be a part of the podcast or the publication, just say, I appreciate you reaching out, but I'm not interested. The absolute non-answer is it's an answer. Just, not, when you're begging for help, anyone at all, you're literally begging for help. And then you won't even answer someone who comes to you and says, I would love to cover this case. I don't like that either. So I'm just going to say I'm covering this case because it was, told to me by someone in law enforcement who understands that other people in law enforcement fucked up. So it's a bit of a layered thing here. But so we go back to March of 2014 and there's a 911 call placed by Huck. And he says, I need an ambulance. Now, I will tell you, Lisa Jones has gone to greater lengths than any victim of a family member I've ever seen, other than maybe someone who goes into law enforcement. Lisa Jones is a web developer who still lives in Denver, the hometown of Dana herself and their brother Stephen. And she becomes an LEVA certified forensic video technician, where she can look at crime scene videos and interpret them, see if they've been edited, etc.
Because of her sister's murder or death?
Yep.
Wow, that's impressive.
It is. That's what I'm saying. She has compiled, when I say there's not a lot of, I'm not going to be citing a lot of journalist names or articles here, because there aren't any, other than the 2-part article in the Beachcomber, because of Lisa, who contacted them and said, will you please let Stephen Downing, who writes for you, who is a detective, a retired detective and retired police chief, would you please let him cover the case? And they did. They let him do it. And he even says, Lisa's statements have been edited for clarification, because Lisa can go on and on. Like I said, the book is filled with details that's why it took me a while to read it, is because I had to stop, because it was overwhelming, because she has gotten into the minutia. She did the job of an entire police force of detectives. I mean, from talking to the medical professionals to talking to, citizens groups to try and get them to look at the case, from taking it to the DA's office and saying, you need to look into this, it needs to be reopened, to taking classes to become a forensic video technician. I mean, everyone needs a sister like Lisa. I mean, I don't know what else to say, but everyone needs someone like that in their corner, an advocate. If it turns out that someone can prove that the way Dana died was an accident, I'm willing to listen. But I can come to you and tell you this from someone who has taught yoga and practiced yoga for over 2 decades. I don't see how this could happen. And when you're a inebriated detective who shows up, not in your right mind, looking at a case, and you're like, yeah, it looks like an accident to me. You believe everything the husband says, which is so antithetical to everything we hear about law enforcement. They suspect everyone, even if it's someone who, it's a clear accident. They still suspect everyone. And
that's every murder investigation I've ever heard of. Everybody's a suspect until you narrow it down.
Right. And Huck was never a suspect. There were never any suspects.
Never?
Nope.
Okay, well.
I can also tell you that Detective Todd Johnson's partner took a leave of absence 6 weeks after this case. And I think it was because he knew it was fucked up. And they fucked it up.
Want to be associated with it.
Yep.
Okay, I can't wait to hear what he did. Exactly.
Well, he shows up, and here's another thing that makes this case more layered. He shows up because someone has, been injured at home. And he shows up because the medical professionals, when she is taken to the hospital, say, this doesn't look like an accident. This looks like she has been hit in the head. So Detective Johnson shows up with his partner, and he's like, oh yeah, it looks like exactly like what the husband said. And here's the other layer. That house was wired with so many cameras. I don't know how you could take a shit without it being on film, which is what I think Lisa went to school for, is to look, because I believe she thinks the video is altered.
Okay. So
and she makes a good point. I'm going to tell you, she makes some points later on in the book that are hard to swallow. But her theory that the videotape has been altered and that there's no standards in place for the Long Beach Police Department for anyone to analyze video other than just to be shown and look at what they're shown. They can see what they're shown, and then they're like, oh, that's it.
They can't do any investigation to find out if it's been digitally altered.
Right. They don't have the department, or, and they wouldn't send it out because they stamp, they put the rubber stamp saying it was an accident. There's more video than we would ever care to watch ever. Everything in that house was on camera, and that also lends itself to what other people outside the family have said, that Huck was insanely jealous and wanted to keep an eye on everything Dana did. You know, she worked from home when she wasn't, you know, out at a client's home helping them, you know, figure out what to do with their kitchen. She did a lot of designing on her computer, on her iPad. That's going to come into play a little later. All of the timing, and I'm not going to go over all of it because it would be the details. We would be here for about 8 episodes and we would all be asleep. But you can find the timeline in Lisa's book, Blunt Force Yoga. You can find it on her website, yogadeath.com. She makes a compelling argument that the video was altered, but she makes more, and I don't know anything about this technology. This is 2014. You know, things are even different now. But what she does make is a compelling argument that it was botched from minute one, that it was never handled the way it should have been handled. If someone has an accident at home and, you know, they choke on a chicken bone or they cut their hand off while they're using their saw, you know, that's different. And they're still alert and awake enough to say, Bob didn't do it, I did it myself. That's different. An accident at home where someone is rendered unconscious and bleeding profusely from the head should be dealt with differently. And I think it's glaring that the Long Beach Police Department fucked up. I don't want to say there was a cover-up. I think it could very well have happened, but what I think there was just incompetence, and nobody cared.
Yeah.
To go deeper.
Yeah.
To look further. I just want to say, this is the through line of this episode, that there's no statute of limitations for the crime of murder. I just want you to remember that. You may not think this is a murder, and if you don't, that's absolutely your decision to think that. But if you think there's anything that, you know, you are questioning, just remember there's no statute of limitations for the crime of murder, and you can always formulate your thoughts. You can, you know, I'm going to give you the information of where to go. So let's just say that Detective Johnson shows up the following day of the accident on Dana's head and does, according to Lisa, a shoddy search of the house. Many times Detective Johnson says to Dana's family, Huck is totally innocent. Now, how do you say that? He has...
On his first inspection?
Yep, he's totally innocent.
The day after?
And do you know what he says is his reasoning? It would take an idiot to kill their spouse when there's so many cameras in this house.
That is the sign of an idiot.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah.
In 2014, there was so much technology available to alter video, especially if it's digital video. And it probably was. I'm guessing It was. How old was he? Do you know how old this guy was?
At the time, I don't. There's pictures of him, and he looks like a combination of Chad Daybell and Chris Farley.
Okay.
Like someone put an air hose up his butt and then expanded him. I think he's very bloated, maybe because of the drinking. I don't know, but he looks...
Well, I'm going to guess he's older, maybe my age or so.
Oh, no. This is 7 years ago. He was maybe in his early 40s. He's not older. He just is not in good health.
Okay, so he's not, there's no excuse for him to be thinking
he doesn't have dementia.
Like we've got one of our friends in the detective force, if I'll just call it that, is an older guy, and I would give him a little slack for not totally understanding, or somebody from his generation, not totally understanding the difference between, traditional videotape and digital recording. Although our friend certainly does know.
Yeah, he's sharper than any knife in your drawer.
Exactly.
I don't think Detective Johnson is stupid. I know that at some point Lisa Jones said, "Are you idiots?" I don't think he's stupid. I think he's just incompetent and lazy and doesn't give a shit.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean,
when he's saying the guy's innocent without
totally innocent, quotes. Oh, Huck is totally innocent.
Oh, my God.
He says this to Dana and Lisa's father, who, a day after he has, looked through the house and been like, oh, yeah, he's totally innocent. And the dad was like, taken aback. And he's like, you'd have to be a complete idiot to kill your spouse in a house with all those video cameras.
Well, it's just total incompetence. It's either total incompetence or he's just so lazy that he doesn't want to do anything. He doesn't want to do any work.
I think that's it. If maybe it isn't incompetence, maybe he isn't as dumb as, maybe he's just didn't want to do the work. Don't be in homicide, which he's not any longer.
Yeah,
apparently.
how could you be in homicide if you take that attitude? Well, every homicide detective, this is the first time I've ever heard of a homicide detective acting this way on his first visit to the scene.
Why do you think that the retired detective said, have you ever heard of blunt force yoga?
Yeah.
I think he wanted, and this is someone in law enforcement who wants someone else in law enforcement to be shown for what they are. And I can tell you what's really frightening to me is that as of 2019, Detective Johnson was no longer a detective, but they had transferred him to the domestic violence unit, which I pity any person who needed to file a report on domestic violence, because I don't think Officer Johnson is going to do a good job.
That's horrifying to even think of.
Yeah. So there are a lot of details, like I said, that Lisa provides in her book on her website. Blood evidence, the wound, her whole family. She flew here immediately. They were a tight-knit family and loved each other very much. And they all flew here and stayed for like 6 weeks trying to, they put their lives on hold, trying to figure out what really happened. And then, a social worker the following day says, look, the medical professionals have concerns about Dana's injuries. They think it looks like someone assaulted her. The social worker has, a duty to then call the police, and she did. She let the police know. All the doctors are saying that the nature of the injuries suggests that it's foul play. They're saying that it looked like she was doing yoga and she fell and hit her head, but no one would have fractured themselves that badly or severely. This is a social worker.
Well, if you've got these folks calling the police, didn't Officer or Detective Johnson have a supervisor or somebody that could have gone to him and said, "Hey, look, these calls are coming in from professionals"?
Well, I believe that Lisa Jones thinks that she doesn't know why, but she thinks Detective Johnson was given carte blanche to do this investigation any way he wanted, and they were going to protect him to, I think she thinks it's the thin blue line. I think it's just, and look, there's a few detectives at the Long Beach office that I love with my heart and would trust my life with them. I have one of their cards in my wallet. And he said, if you ever get into any sort of trouble and need help, you let me know. It doesn't have to be in Long Beach. And he is a good man who just wants to get the bad guy. That's what I think the Long Beach Police Department needs more of. It may have been cleaned up. It may be better by now. But I think this is one of those dark days in the Long Beach Police Department that just so happens to, unfortunately, result in the death of a woman, and it wasn't an accident. And this is just my opinion. I'm not a coroner. I'm not an investigator. I'm not a criminalist. But I can tell you the preponderance of evidence, to me, at least warrants that the case be reopened. At the very least, be reopened. So, here it is a day later, and the detective is saying to medical examiners and Dana's family, quote, "A guy would have to be crazy to kill his wife with so many video cameras around the house." End quote. I can tell you Lisa Jones thinks that, I guess this detective assumed that all the video files are authentic and give a complete account of the activities in and around the house. But she feels That is incorrect. She says in her investigation, there's blood evidence that was missed. There's, sections of the video that she feels have been altered. Huck's claims to the medical professionals. Dana fell recently on a trip to Hawaii. She fell out of walking around a pool and hit her head. And yeah, she was evaluated and was reported to be fine. But, she's been moving slower and she's having trouble getting up in the morning. Yeah, probably because she doesn't want to face life with you. I don't know that that's a physical issue, Huck. She's probably wanting to sleep all day from depression because she's married to you and doesn't know how to get out. And I can tell you her family said Dana hasn't been to Hawaii in years.
Yeah, that's a claim that's easily verifiable.
Yeah.
Did they try to verify it?
No.
Okay. Well, this is at best this is malpractice. I'm going to just ask this early on here: did Lisa or the family sue Long Beach?
No, not yet.
Oh my!
But I'm telling you, she went to a lot of great lengths and tried other avenues. I think she knows. When a coroner says blunt force head trauma, accidental fall, you don't really have a basis to sue them. You can sue them civilly, like what producer Mark is saying, but they're not litigious. They're not.
Yeah, I mean, their window to sue for her wrongful death is passed. You only have 2 years to do it.
Yeah.
So
she tried other avenues, trying to get other people to look. I mean, the attorney general. I mean, she really, and she's still fighting for it. And what she's really asking for is that the case be reopened. She's not filing a lawsuit. She just wants the goddamn case to be reopened. And there's just no reason in my mind why it shouldn't be. I mean, the whole family is like, why would Detective Johnson just take this coroner's report and put it together and say, well, this is what happened. This is the truth. I mean, it's,
Is there video of the quote unquote accident? Is there actual video of the accident?
No.
With all those cameras?
That's a great question, producer Mark. No. I can tell you what is listed. I have the 22-page autopsy report printed out. I can tell you that Lisa, as this, forensic video technician, has examined the home surveillance video, and she thinks that not only has it been altered, but that there is a very large period of time that can't be accounted for, that Dana is really last seen on video the night before, on March 2nd, before Huck called on the morning of March 3rd. And for 11 hours, Dana, so there's not cameras in every room. I'm a little surprised, but I think with 11 hours, she thinks that Huck could have altered that too, because he's the one who set up the entire system.
Sure.
She thinks, there was one even aimed at the bathroom, and that was,
And where was she practicing yoga? Where was
in a separate room, like what we have here, in our house, like a separate off room that she set up for yoga. And,
right.
And here's
so he videos the bathroom, but he won't video where she does yoga.
Well, she may not know. I'm just saying that maybe the bathroom wasn't, and I'm hoping their master bedroom wasn't, and he's not he's starting his own OnlyFans site or something. There's in Lisa's mind, there's 11 hours that really can't be accounted for. 11 hours. Dana is last seen on video the night of March 2nd. She puts her iPad into a hutch in the kitchen where she always kept it. So here's the one piece of evidence that she outlines for me that if they don't have an answer for this is glaring. There's a lot. There's so much information in this case. I could talk to you for days, and I just can't, because it's minute details that even my brain can't get around. But the last thing that's recorded of Dana is putting her iPad in the kitchen hutch on the night of March 2nd around 10:21 p.m. That's the last time she's seen on camera. Now, somehow, Dana's iPad gets moved because the morning of March 3rd, she supposedly goes online and orders something from a shopping site and then starts a yoga video and then falls and her husband calls 911.
So she's supposedly doing yoga to the video? Is that what?
Yes, but I'm going to explain. The following day, on March 4th, Dana's iPad is in the hutch where she left it on March 2nd.
So, if she, okay.
But wait. If that device had ever been in her yoga room, how did it get put back
Right.
in the hutch?
Right.
And here's the other thing. The video that she was logged onto was a beginner video.
Right.
Now,
Of course it was.
Look,
Jeez.
maybe Dana was tired and wanted to start slow. Here's another piece of information you should know. Dana, as a regular yoga practitioner, would get up in the morning and the first thing she would do is practice yoga. And it was her own series of, her own sequence of yoga poses. She didn't really watch videos. It just feels...
This is just ridiculous.
I know.
It's ridiculous.
I know.
Okay.
And here's... This is literally... I'm just giving you the high points because this is so awful. And there are other pieces of information. But this is the one that means the most to me. When Detective Johnson finds the iPad on the 4th, he's on video. And he turns and says to Huck, how do you get into this? And Huck gives him the 4-digit lock code. Unlock... so he can fucking get into it.
I'm sorry. This is such a terrible case. I shouldn't be
know.
laughing, but it's laughable.
It is laughable. It's the Keystone Cops in better suits. Is honest to God what it is. So one of the things, when you're not from an area, you're not from a city, but your family member lives there. God forbid this happens to any of us. God forbid we have to move or go or stay for an extended period of time in a city with a family member because something terrible's happened to them. And we have to find out everything we can about, what police agency, where can I go? What can I do? And Lisa is smart. She may not be a great writer of a memoir about her sister, but it's not a bad memoir. It's just dry and detailed. It doesn't have that, poetic magic that writers have. She just could have used help, an editor or a ghostwriter.
Yep. She needs a ghostwriter. She needs the book needs to be, Lisa Jones as told to.
Yeah. Yeah. You're exactly right.
That's
right.
Really what she needs.
But I'll just tell you, I feel like every avenue they went down, a door was slammed in their face. They, tried to go to the Long Beach PD's Internal Affairs Division, which I got to be honest, I don't know any internal affairs that are well run. I've said it before. I think they run down tiny infractions and leave large things uncovered, just covered up. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. I don't know who polices the police, but that doesn't seem like a good system. But Lisa reached out to something called the CPCC, and it's the Citizen Police Complaint Commission. And I'm just going to tell you, it sounds like a fucking shitty HOA board. They just, I used to write and produce a radio talk show for a man who did, a creative, brilliant man who did different voices, pretending to be callers, calling into his own show, kind of a split personality. And he had a character who was an auxiliary police officer. And that's what this sounds like. The Citizens Police Complaint Commission is an auxiliary, oversight committee that just is like a shitty HOA board.
And they basically favor police. They all want to be police people, probably.
I think
right?
that might be true. I think that's a very good point.
The
Producer
character
Mark.
you're talking about, that was his person. He
wanted to be a cop, but he couldn't pass the psych.
Right.
Yeah. So, so Anitra Dempsey, who is the executive director of the CPCC, said that, we're not going to further look into this complaint, but we'll send it to the Long Beach PD Internal Affairs. And when Lisa said, "Why will you not look further?" Anitra Dempsey said, "It's been determined by the police department's review staff and our CPCC staff that no further action should be taken on your complaint because the allegation that officers failed to conduct an investigation was either disproved by independent witnesses or physical evidence."
In this day and age, I'm going to guarantee you that if this were, say, the city of L.A., because there are these oversight boards in every city.
Mm-hmm.
If this were the city of L.A. or just about any other city nowadays, they would be on it. So, this is weird. This whole thing is bizarre.
It's beyond weird, Producer Mark. So, the Beachcomber publication said, "We asked a highly respected homicide investigator and former major city chief of police to read the materials on Lisa Jones's website and offered judgment as to whether the case should be reopened. The homicide investigator replied, in quotes, 'There are too many unanswered questions the original homicide detective should have answered before ruling this case anything like accidental. In spite of the fact that it's probably too late to prove the case with forensic evidence, the investigation should be reopened with a focus upon case elements and investigative techniques, and at this point should not be made public. Hell yes, I would reopen this investigation. So much is wrong of what I have read. I would assemble an independent team to include a forensic investigator and independent lab, but not within the culture that originally investigated it.'"
Thank you.
And do you know who he suggested? The LA Sheriff's Department, because their homicide unit is so respected.
Ha!
And we have friends in the LA Sheriff's Department homicide unit who, like I'm saying, it feels like I've been coming down hard on police agencies in the last couple of episodes. And I promise I'm not, because I'm very grateful. But I'm also going to fucking tell you when this shit is bad. And there is no statute of limitations for the crime of murder. I just want to say that again. So one of the comments on the Beachcomber publication online, as a former neighbor and a very close friend of Dana, I too am 100% convinced that her husband is responsible for her death. Dana and her husband, who I'm sure by now has changed his name again, lived just a few doors down in a Long Beach condominium complex. I had repeated firsthand views of his rage, mental abuse, attempts to control her, and outrageous lying. I beg anyone reading this, if you have any way to help Lisa Jones and her family in their search for justice for Dana, please come forward. Never in my life have I been so in fear of a man I personally knew. I have no doubt this man is capable of murder and he will do it again. Now, I'm leaving this woman's name out. It's on, the Beachcomber website. You can find her. Just because she was a neighbor of theirs and it's her opinion doesn't mean it's true. However, witness statements lend themselves to, probable cause. And I really, think that this should be reopened with every fiber in my being. So here's two things I need to say before we wrap up this episode. One is that Carl Jenkins, Cain Finn Jones, Cain Kealoha, Huckers, a year or two after Dana's death, went to a widower's camp, and there's him on video standing next to a woman, shockingly, and was like, it really means a lot to come to this camp and you work out your... Yeah, he can't even cry right.
He works out his works out with a lot of hugs from beautiful women that are there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he could be a predator. I mean, the thing that stops me from saying that is that he and Dana were married for so long, and maybe he just, got tired of her before she could find a way to get out. And this is, again, I'm just saying this is my opinion. I don't have proof, and apparently the police, don't have proof either. So the last thing I want to say, and I don't believe this. I just have to say I don't put any kind of stock in this. It is a theory of Lisa Jones. Huck wanted Dana cremated. She and the family did not think that's what Dana's wishes would be, but obviously Dana didn't get to give her wishes because her death was so sudden, and she was kept alive for 3 days. She never regained consciousness. There was too much swelling in the brain, and she was an organ donor. And Lisa Jones believes that the detectives who were in charge of her sister's case are in cahoots with something called One Legacy that harvests organs for transplant. I can't buy into that.
Yeah.
Okay. I cannot buy into that. Lisa Jones I saw the movie Coma as a much too young child, and, thinking I shouldn't it influenced me greatly, thinking that, Louise Fletcher could keep, people alive, that Michael Douglas and Rip Torn and Genevieve Bujold, all hospital, doctors and hospital administrators. Michael Douglas, finds out that Rip Torn is getting kickbacks from the Jefferson Institute because they keep people alive, put them in comas, keep them alive, and take their organs and sell them on the black market. I don't think that One Legacy is an organization that gives kickbacks to detectives. That's too deep for me. I can't go there. And I get why Lisa Jones thinks that is a possibility because of all of the other I have to say incompetence, because of all the, I don't want to say malfeasance, because I don't know that any of this was on purpose, but it's hard to not use that word when it was literally just the most botched investigation I've ever seen.
Gross negligence.
It is gross negligence, you're right. So what I'm going to say, and it's a little different than what I normally ask of you tipsters, you may not have information on the death of Dana Jones, but I want you to know there is no statute of limitations for the crime of murder. And maybe she wasn't murdered. Maybe this was an accident. I don't know how, but maybe this was an accident. And I'm not fond of giving you this contact information because I believe our current LA County DA has lost his motherfucking mind. And there is a recall that hopefully will happen, but you can still contact. I know there are excellent DAs. I know there are because I've seen them in action in other cases. And just because he's the head DA doesn't mean everyone is ridiculous. So what I'm going to give you is the information on how to get a hold of the LA County DA's office, and you can tell them you want this case reopened. You don't have to call and say, I have information, but if you have any information on Cain Finn, Carl Jenkins, Hucky, Kealoha, Cain, whatever, please give that. Or if you know information about something that happened in Dana's life that could be helpful, absolutely give that. But if you would like to call and say, reopen this case, at the very least, reopen this case, please feel free to call 213-974-3512 or email info@da.lacounty.gov. And more cowbell.
If you'd like to support this podcast, go to patreon.com/justthetipsters.